Rain had been falling relentlessly over Rumo Okoro, one of the busiest parts of Port Harcourt. Floodwater gathered along the edges of the road, reflecting the glow of street lights and passing danfos. The city never truly slept, but nights like this made even the loudest places feel uneasy. Inside the police station, Detective Tamuno Briggs stood by the window, arms folded, watching the rain cut across the glass in sharp lines. His instincts had always been his greatest weapon. He didn't just investigate crimes, he felt them coming. Behind him, a chair scraped lightly. "You go watch that rain finish?" a voice said, relaxed, almost amused. Tamuno didn't turn immediately. He knew that voice too well. Fyneface Kalio, his partner, his closest ally on the force. "Better than sitting down pretending everything is normal," Tamuno replied, his tone steady. Fyneface chuckled softly, dropping into his chair and loosening his collar. He had that calm presence people trusted instantly, quiet confidence, controlled expressions, and a disarming smile that made suspects lower their guards without realizing it. But Tamuno had learned something long ago. The calmest people often carried the darkest storms. Their partnership had formed quickly when Fyneface transferred into the division 3 years ago. Since then, they had handled the kind of cases others avoided: ritual killings, disappearances along the waterfront, bodies found in places no one wanted to talk about. And somehow, they always cracked them. "New case," Fyneface said, flipping open a brown file. "And this one, it's not ordinary." Tamuno turned. "When is it ever?" Fyneface's smile lingered, but his eyes told a different story. 3 bodies, he said. Different locations, same pattern. No struggle, no noise, clean work. Tamuno's expression hardened slightly. Clean work? That's not common. That's intentional. The briefing room buzzed with low conversations as officers gathered. Ceiling fans turned lazily, barely pushing the humid air around. Superintendent Bomahart walked in, dropping a set of photographs on the table. "We have a serious situation," she said, her voice firm. 3 confirmed victims, all found in separate areas, one in Borokiri, one near Elekahia, and the last one here in Rumokoro. Tamuno stepped closer, studying the images. No visible struggle, no forced entry, no chaos, just stillness. Too much stillness. "This is controlled," Tamuno said quietly. SP Hart nodded. "Exactly. So whoever is behind this knows what they are doing." Her gaze shifted. "Briggs, Kalio, you are handling this case." Fyneface gave a slight nod, as if it meant nothing. But Tamuno felt something shift inside him. Something subtle. Something uncomfortable. Later that night, the station had thinned out. The hum of generators outside blended with the distant sound of traffic. Tamuno sat alone, the case file spread before him. He examined every detail carefully. Then his hand stopped. There it was, a faint carving on the wall near one of the victims. Small, deliberate, almost invisible unless you are looking for it. And Tamuno was, because he had seen it before, years ago. Back when the entire region had been shaken by whispers of a killer no one could catch. A killer who left no witnesses, no evidence, no mistakes. They gave him a name in the streets of River State, the Creek Phantom. Tamuno leaned back slowly, his pulse rising. That case went cold. No suspects, no identity, just silence and fear. Now, the same pattern, the same precision, the same mark. "This can't be," he muttered. But deep down, he already knew. "You're still here?" Fyneface's voice came from the doorway. Tamuno quickly closed the file, masking his thoughts. "Trying to understand something," he said. Fyneface walked in casually. "Or overthinking it?" Tamuno watched him closely now. "You don't find this strange? No mistakes, no witnesses, nothing."
Fyneface shrugged lightly. Some people are just careful. Tamuno's eyes didn't leave his. Or experienced. For a brief second, Fyneface's expression shifted. Not enough for anyone else to notice, but Tamuno did. Maybe, Fyneface said quietly. The next morning, they arrived at an abandoned building near the outskirts of Transamadi. The place smelled of rust and damp wood, broken windows letting thin streaks of light. Tamuno moved carefully, scanning every corner. Fyneface walked ahead, too confidently, like someone familiar with the space. Then it happened. A pause. Just a second. Fyneface hesitated near a wooden surface, then stepped away quickly. Tamuno noticed immediately. Something there? He asked. Fyneface shook his head. Nothing important. But Tamuno was already moving towards the spot. And there it was again. The same symbol. But this one wasn't perfect. It looked rushed. Almost like someone tried to correct it. Tamuno felt a chill run down his spine. Killers like this don't make mistakes. Unless something is off. Or they're getting careless. He turned slowly. Fyneface was watching him now. Not casually, but carefully. Like a man calculating his next move. The thought he couldn't ignore. That night, Tamuno sat in his car outside his apartment in GRE Phase 2, the engine silent. Rain tapped lightly against the roof. His mind replayed everything. The patterns, the symbol, Fyneface's calmness, his precision, the way he always seemed one step ahead. And now, this case. Tamuno shook his head. No, it's not possible. But the thought refused to leave. Because if it was true, then everything he believed, everything he trusted, was a lie. Tamuno stepped out of the car slowly, staring into the dark, quiet street. If it's really you, Fyneface, he whispered. His voice tightened. Then I've been hunting you while sitting right beside you. Thunder rolled across the sky above Port Harcourt. And somewhere, a truth long buried was beginning to rise.
Sleep didn't come easy for Tamuno Briggs that night. By morning, the rain had eased, but the heaviness in Port Harcourt remained. The streets were already alive. Hawkers shouting, keke engines sputtering, life moving forward like nothing was wrong. But Tamuno knew better. Something was very wrong. At the station, Tamuno didn't go straight to his desk. Instead, he headed for the archives. The old record room smelled of dust and neglect, filled with forgotten files and cases that never found closure, the kind of place where truths were buried quietly. He searched for one file, one name, one nightmare. After nearly an hour, he found it. A thick, worn folder labeled Unsolved Serial Case, Creek Panthon. Tamuno placed it on the table and opened it carefully. Photos, reports, victim profiles. Every detail matched what they were seeing now. Same method, same silence, same mark. But there was something else. Something he had missed back then. He flipped too faster, his eyes scanning for patterns. Then he froze. All the victims from years ago had one thing in common. They were connected. Not by family, not by location, but by a single incident. A case that had been buried quietly. An illegal detention operation that went wrong near the creeks outside the city. Tamuno's chest tightened. What really happened that night? He whispered. Because whatever it was, it had created a monster. Tamuno flipped to the final pages of the file. Witness reports, officer logs, names of personnel involved. And then his heart skipped. One name stood out. Not because it was suspicious, but because it was familiar. Too familiar. Fyneface Kalio.
Tamuno stared at it. No rank, no detailed report, just a brief mention. Civilian observer present during operation. That was all, but it was enough. Too much. Tamuno leaned back slowly, the weight of the realization pressing down on him. Fyneface wasn't just connected to the case, he was there. Looking for something interesting? Tamuno's body went still. That voice, right behind him. He turned slowly. Fyneface stood at the entrance of the archive room, hands in his pockets, his expression calm as usual. But his eyes were searching, measuring. "You don't usually come here," Fyneface added. Tamuno forced a neutral expression. "Just checking old files, trying to see if anything matches." Fyneface nodded slowly, walking closer. "And did you find anything?" Tamuno held his gaze. "Maybe." A brief silence settled between them. Thick, heavy, dangerous. Then Fyneface smiled faintly. "Good, because this case, it's starting to feel personal." Tamuno's chest tightened. Personal. That word didn't sit right. Later that day, Tamuno made a decision. He needed to see it for himself, the place where it all started. He drove out towards the creeks on the outskirts of Port Harcourt, where the city slowly gave way to water, mangroves, and silence. The air felt different there, heavier, like it carried memories. An old fisherman pointed him in the right direction. "That place," the man said quietly, "people don't go there anymore." "Why?" Tamuno asked. The fisherman hesitated, then simply said, "Some things should not be remembered." The abandoned structure stood half hidden by overgrown vegetation, broken, rotting, forgotten, but not by everyone. Tamuno stepped inside carefully. The wooden floor creaked on his weight. Sunlight filtered through broken boards, and then he saw it. Carved on one of the walls, larger than before, clearer, deliberate, the same symbol. But this time, it wasn't hidden. It was displayed, like a message, like a signature. Tamuno moved closer, his pulse rising. Then he noticed something else. Words, faint, scratched beneath the symbol. He wiped the surface gently to read it. And when he did, his blood ran cold. "You left me here." Tamuno stepped back slowly, his mind racing. Left him? Who? And why? The pieces were starting to connect now. That operation years ago, something went wrong. Someone was abandoned, and whoever survived didn't forget, didn't forgive. The Creek Panther wasn't just a killer, he was someone seeking justice or revenge. Tamuno swallowed hard, and then the thought returned, stronger this time, clearer. Fyneface was there that night. Fyneface had no past records before joining the force. Fyneface always stayed calm, too calm, and now the killer was back. Tamuno's phone rang suddenly. Tamuno answered immediately. "Briggs." "Another body," Espiboma had said from the other end. "Just found near Oil Mill Market." Tamuno's grip tightened. "Same pattern?" he asked. A pause. Then, "Yes." Tamuno closed his eyes briefly. It was escalating, getting faster, more confident. "I'm on my way," he said, ending the call. But as he turned to leave, he felt it. That presence, that awareness, like someone had been watching him. He looked back one last time at the wall, at the symbol, at the message. And for the first time, he didn't just feel like he was chasing a killer. He felt like the killer was leading him. As Tamuno drove back into Port Harcourt, one question echoed in his mind. Was Fyneface haunting the truth with him or carefully guiding him away from it? because now it wasn't just about solving a case anymore. It was about survival.
The crime scene near Oil Mill Market was already crowded when Tamuno arrived. The usual chaos of Port Harcourt had slowed to a cautious distance. Traders whispering, bystanders stretching their necks, police tape barely holding back curiosity. Tamuno stepped under the tape, his face unreadable. Then he saw the body. Same stillness, same positioning, same unnatural calm. And just like before, no struggle, no noise, no witnesses. Time of death, Tamuno asked, crouching beside the victim. Less than 2 hours ago, one of the officers replied. It's like nobody saw anything. Tamuno didn't respond, because he already knew. This wasn't about what people saw. It was about what they were never meant to see. You got here fast. Tamuno didn't turn. Fyneface. Of course. I was nearby, Tamuno said. Fyneface stepped closer, scanning the scene with quiet precision. His eyes moved quickly, calculating, absorbing everything in seconds. Too quickly, like someone reviewing work he already understood. What do you think? Tamuno stood slowly, wiping his hands. I think we're running out of time. Fyneface tilted his head slightly. Or getting closer. Tamuno looked at him now. Depends on which side you're on. For a split second, silence. Then Fyneface smiled faintly. You've been watching too many crime films. But Tamuno didn't smile back. As the forensic team worked, Tamuno walked the perimeter, scanning every inch. Then something caught his attention. A small object near a wooden stall, almost overlooked. He bent down and picked it up carefully. A button. Dark, polished, expensive. Too expensive for the average trader in this area. He turned it over in his hand. And then he froze. He had seen this before. Not in a case file, not in evidence, but somewhere much closer, much more recent. He slowly lifted his eyes toward Fyneface. Fyneface stood a few meters away, speaking with another officer, calm, composed, untouched by the tension in the air. Tamuno's gaze dropped briefly to Fyneface's shirt. One button was missing. Tamuno's heartbeat began to rise, slow and heavy. He walked over casually. You lose something? He asked, holding up the button. Fyneface glanced at it, then down at his shirt. A brief pause. Almost nothing, but enough. Must have come off earlier, Fyneface said smoothly. Yeah, cheap things always fall apart, Tamuno said slowly. Their eyes met, and this time, neither of them looked away first. Back at the station, Tamuno didn't sit. He stood by the window again, just like the night before. But this time, he wasn't thinking. He was deciding. Behind him, Fyneface walked in. You've been quiet. Tamuno turned slightly. Just thinking. About the case? About everything. Fyneface leaned against the desk. You're starting to sound paranoid. Tamuno let out a low breath. Am I? Fyneface shrugged lightly. You tell me. Silence stretched between them again, but this silence was different. This wasn't friendship anymore. This was tension. Pure, sharp, dangerous. Tamuno finally turned fully, his eyes locked onto Fyneface's, and this time there was no hesitation. You were there, Tamuno said. Fyneface didn't react. Where? He asked calmly. The creek, Tamuno continued. Years ago, that operation, you were there. A pause, a long one. Then Fyneface exhaled softly.
So you went digging. Not denial, not surprise, just acceptance. Tamuno's chest tightened. Who are you? He asked quietly. Fyneface's lips curved slightly. Careful, you might not like the answer. Fyneface stepped closer now, slow, measured, controlled. You ever wonder, he began, why some cases feel unfinished? Tamuno said nothing. Why some people disappear from records like they never existed? His voice remained calm, too calm. Or why justice sometimes needs a different kind of hand. Tamuno's jaw tightened. This isn't justice, it's murder. Fyneface tilted his head slightly. Is it? He asked, and for the first time, there was something in his eyes, something dark, something old. You saw that place, didn't you? The creek. Tamuno didn't respond. You saw the message. A beat. Then, you left me here. The words hung heavy in the air. Tamuno's pulse spiked. You were there, he said again more firmly. Yes, Fyneface replied. No hesitation, no denial, just truth. They were supposed to process everyone, Fyneface said quietly. His expression didn't change, but his voice carried something deeper now. Instead, they cut corners, and when things went wrong, he paused. They left people behind. Tamuno's chest tightened. People? Fyneface repeated. Not people, he corrected. Evidence. Silence. Heavy. Unforgiving. They locked us in that place, Fyneface continued. No food, no water, no way out. Tamuno swallowed. How did you survive? Fyneface's faint smile returned, but this time it wasn't warm. You already know the answer. Tamuno stepped back slowly, the weight of everything crashing down on him. His partner, his friend, the man he trusted with his life, was not just connected to the case. He was the case. I was hunting a serial killer, Tamuno said under his breath. Fyneface's eyes locked onto his. And you found him, he replied quietly. Sitting next to you. Outside, the city of Port Harcourt roared on, unaware that one of its darkest secrets had just been exposed.
The air inside the station felt heavier than usual. Not because of the heat, not because of the case, but because of the truth that now stood between two men who once trusted each other with their lives. Tamuno didn't reach for his weapon, not yet, because something in him needed to understand first, needed to hear it completely. You killed them, Tamuno said quietly. Fyneface didn't deny it. They were part of it, he replied. Every single one of them. Tamuno's jaw tightened. So you became judge, jury, and executioner? Fyneface's gaze didn't waver. No, I became what they created. Outside, the sounds of Port Harcourt continued as usual. Cars honking, traders calling out, life moving forward. Inside that room, everything had stopped. You could have reported it, Tamuno said. There were ways. Fyneface let out a short, humorless laugh. Reported it? He repeated. To who? The same system that buried it? He stepped closer. You saw the file, Tamuno. You saw how they erased everything. No names, no accountability, just silence. Tamuno didn't respond, because that was true. They weren't innocent, Fyneface continued. Every one of them played a role that night. The victims this week? Tamuno asked. Fyneface nodded. Officers, informants, people who signed off on that operation. Tamuno's chest tightened. And you tracked them down, one by one? Yes. The simplicity of the answer made it worse. No anger, no hesitation, just purpose. But something went wrong, Tamuno said, his voice sharper now. You made a mistake. Fyneface's eyes flickered slightly. Did I? He asked. Tamuno stepped forward. That symbol at Transamadi, it was rushed. You slipped. For the first time, Fyneface didn't respond immediately. A small silence. Then, maybe, he admitted. Tamuno's eyes narrowed. You're getting careless. Fyneface shook his head slowly. No, I'm running out of time. Tamuno felt it then. That shift, that realization. There's one more name, he said. Fyneface didn't deny it. There's always one more. Who? Tamuno asked. Fyneface's gaze locked onto his, and for the first time, there was no distance, no mask, just truth. You. Silence crashed into the room. Tamuno's mind raced. That's not possible, he said. I wasn't part of that operation. Fyneface studied him carefully. Not directly, but your signature was. Tamuno froze. What? You signed the transfer order, Fyneface continued. The one that moved the detainees to that location. Tamuno's breath caught. That was paperwork, routine. It sealed our fate. The calm in his voice was gone now. Not replaced by rage, but by something colder, something deeper. You didn't ask questions, Tamuno. You didn't verify. You just signed. Tamuno shook his head slowly. I didn't know. Fyneface stepped closer. I believe you. That made it worse. But it doesn't change what happened. The room felt smaller now. Tighter, like the walls were closing in. So, what now? Tamuno asked quietly. Fyneface's expression softened just slightly. For what it's worth, you were the only one I hesitated about. Tamuno swallowed. That hesitation is still there. A pause. A long one. Then, no. Tamuno's hand moved slowly toward his weapon. Fyneface noticed, but didn't react. Not immediately. You don't have to do this, Tamuno said. Fyneface's lips curved faintly. I already did. In one swift motion, both men reached. 2 guns drawn, 2 lives on the edge. No backup, no witnesses, just truth and consequence. You were my friend, Tamuno said, his voice steady despite everything. Fyneface nodded once. And you were the closest thing to a normal life I had. That hit harder than anything else. For a while, Fyneface added quietly. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky above Port Harcourt. Inside, 2 men stood on opposite sides of a line neither of them could step back from. Walk away, Tamuno said finally. Drop the gun. We can still end this differently. Fyneface shook his head slowly. It was never going to end differently. A beat. Then, because you didn't just find the killer, Tamuno. His finger tightened slightly. You became the story
the moment you signed that paper.
For a moment, everything stood still. 2 men, 2 guns, one truth that could not be undone. The distant rumble of thunder rolled over Port Harcourt as if the sky itself was holding its breath. Tamuno's grip tightened slightly, but his voice remained controlled. "It doesn't have to end this way," he said. Fyneface's expression didn't change. It already has. The silence snapped. A single gunshot rang out, loud, sharp, final. Then another, and then silence again. Heavy, unmoving, unforgiving. Minutes later, officers rushed into the room, alerted by the sound. What they found would become a story whispered across the city. Fyneface lay on the floor, motionless, his gun still in his hand. Tamuno stood a few steps away, his own weapon lowered slowly, his chest rising and falling heavily. No words, just the weight of what had happened. SP Bomahart arrived shortly after, her expression hard as she took in the scene. "What happened here?" she demanded. Tamuno didn't answer immediately. Because how do you explain something like this? How do you explain that the man you worked with, trusted, relied on, was the very thing you were hunting? In the official report, it was simple, clean, controlled. Suspect identified and neutralized during confrontation. No mention of friendship, no mention of the past, no mention of the creek, no mention of the truth, because the system didn't deal in truth. It dealt in closure. Days passed, then weeks. Life in Port Harcourt returned to its usual rhythm. Markets reopened, traffic returned, people moved on. But Tamuno didn't. Late one night, Tamuno sat alone at his desk. The station was quiet, too quiet. In front of him, a file. Not the official one, but his own. Inside it were details no record contained. The creek, the message, "You left me here." And something else, something that didn't sit right. Tamuno stared at the final photo taken at the last crime scene. Fyneface's body, positioned on the floor, still, calm, almost deliberate. Tamuno's eyes narrowed. Slowly, he reached into the file and pulled out another photo from years ago. One of the Creek Phantom's victims. Same positioning, same stillness, same signature. Tamuno's pulse began to rise again. "No," he whispered. Fyneface had always been precise, careful, intentional, even in death. Tamuno's mind raced. What if that wasn't the end? What if that was part of the design? Because one thing didn't make sense. Fyneface never made mistakes. Not before. Not now. So why would he allow himself to be stopped? Tamuno leaned back slowly, the weight of the realization settling in. Maybe Fyneface didn't lose. Maybe he finished what he started. Everyone connected to that night was gone, except one, Tamuno himself. And now, he carried the truth, the guilt, the memory, the consequence. Outside, the night air moved quietly through Port Harcourt, unaware, unbothered, unchanged. But somewhere in that city, a story remained, not written in reports, not spoken in public, but carved into memory. A story about a hunter who found his target sitting beside him all along. Tamuno closed the file slowly. His reflection stared back at him through the dark window, tired, changed, haunted. "I was hunting a serial killer," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper, "and I found him sitting next to me,
A pause, then softer. Or maybe he looked down at his own hands. Maybe he was waiting for me to understand. The lights flickered once, then steadied. And somewhere deep in the silence, one question remained unanswered. Was the story really over? Or had it just passed from one man to another?